In this chapter we discuss web part connections. Now a web part connection can be described as, when web parts pass data to each other. So for example, this web part right here may be a provider of information to this web part. It will update that when it receives it based on some triggering event over on this web part. I guess a better way to describe it would be to just show you a picture of it. Here's an example of two web parts. This is a batch, or an RT batch table web part. This is a regular trend. And there's a connection between the two. The little green lightning bolt shows that. There's a connection such that the start time and end time that you see right here, that's going to be passed over to this trend when I click on it. So there's the triggering event. I don't know if you saw it, but right down here, our start time and end time, yeah, there we go. That was rather slow. It just changed based on the clicking of this batch. So if I click that again, yeah, that's more like it. We're seeing now the start time and end time are being taken from each batch and sent to the receiving RT web part, and that's the RT trend. So that's an example of two web parts that are connected to each other. Now there are a couple of ways they can be connected. When you're an RT web part that's providing data, you can either provide parameters or provide what's known as row data. Actually, we suggest using it's essentially the same data, but parameters is all kind of a client-side activity. So you don't have to make round trips to the server when you're just providing parameters. We suggest when you have that option to always use that option. Now also, there is a type of a web part connection where you send filtered information, and that's something that we can do with Excel services. We'll describe that later on. Here's a couple of questions. Get you to think, really. Pause this if you'd like to just do a little mental exercise here. What RT web parts, of the ones you've seen already, which ones do you think are going to be providers? Now go ahead and pause this if you'd like. Now, the answer to that, the providers are going to be those things that provide some kind of context. Like, for example, the RT time range. That provides a start time and end time. You just saw an RT batch table. That actually can provide context as well by passing the start time and end times of batches. We have something called the RT tree view that you can use to pass module context. Okay, another question. What RT web parts do you think would be consumers? Well, that would be those things that rely on start times and end times. So things like the RT graphic, RT gauge, the RT time series, RT trend, for example. All those things would be consumers of these connections. Now we do have a couple that are both. You think what those are? We haven't really looked at all of our web parts yet, but there's an RT values web part we've looked at already. That can be used to actually send values to other web parts, but it also can receive start times and end times. And we have an RT table web part that we'll look at later on. Now, before we move on, I want to discuss two things about connections. There are implicit connections that we've seen before, and these are the RT time range is one of those. There's an implicit connection between all the other web parts on the page, RT web parts on the page. Now, the explicit connection is something that you have to do when you're in design mode. We're basically going to pass values, and we're going to use this little black lightning bolt indicating on the receiving web part, indicating we're going to configure a connection. When it's actually connected, it changes green. And of course, you can indicate connected or not by looking at, you can toggle these on and off. So in the coming exercises, we're going to take a look at demonstrations and exercises. We're going to take a look at some of these. Now, one more question. Think for a second some of the different possible connections you can make using different RT web parts. Now, a couple off the top of my head would be, for example, if you had RT values that you're going to send to an RT trend. Okay, that's actually something that we support. You send the values over to a trend or an RT time series. Okay. The RT tree view would be able to provide context to the RT graphic and also to the RT batch trend, or the batch table. So, and then there are web parts that are not involved with OSI, like for example lists and documents, where you can use the tree view to bring up certain operating instructions or links that would be specific to a particular unit that's on the RT tree view.